whole life. I'm built like a tank. And so that was kind of the nature of the conversation. And he told me that he had struggled with ever not drinking or ever not doing drugs. And he also told me that he didn't particularly concerned with his children, and he would express shame or regret about times that he had been inebriated to the point of falling down or embarrassing himself, urinating on himself, things like that, when his children were around. He told me that in his relationships with life sober, and that it was too painful to be alive without had experienced great bouts of jealousy in relationships that had also led to a lot of drinking and a lot of rage activities. He told me that happened with Winona. He told me that happened with Winona Ryder and Kate Moss. He told me that had happened with Vanessa Paradis.
Mr. Tillet Wright, what, if any, observations did you make about Mr. Depp abusing OxyContin?
Over the course of those 2 years, Mr. Depp told me verbatim that he was addicted to OxyContin. And I have a text message from him where he expresses that it's extraordinarily hard to kick, and that I don't remember exactly the words that he uses, but he referred to it to me verbally many times as like the hardest thing that he's ever tried to kick, which he's tried to kick most things. He said it was harder than heroin. So he was very open and verbose about OxyContin, having gotten addicted to OxyContin.
So what, if any, observations did you make about Mr. Depp smoking cigarettes and joints, marijuana?
Mr. Depp, as far as I could see, always had a cigarette or joint in his mouth at all times, to the point where I was confused about how he could function. He also showed me his marijuana closet that had, I don't know, tens and tens of pounds of weed in it.
What, if any, observations did you make while you were staying at Sweetser? I think you said that was August 2013 through May of 2014, with respect to the type of alcohol and the amount of alcohol that Mr. Depp was consuming.
When I saw Mr. Depp drink, it was often hard liquor. I believe it was whiskey and gin and tequila, maybe. Could also be vodka. I don't know. He had a full bar in 80, the house that with his recording studio in it, that they mostly stayed in. So I know whiskey for sure, and there was also red wine, a lot of red wine.
And when you talk about the whiskey and the red wine, how much did you observe Mr. Depp consume on any given occasion of those?
I don't know. The one occasion I know specifically was the one that I mentioned before during the argument, where he suddenly had a glass of whiskey, and I remember it being like, I remember clocking, because I grew up counting people's drinks, I remember clocking that it was a very large pour in the glass of whiskey.
If you recall those, I think my question was, what, if any, observations did you make, or did Mr. Depp ever tell you about him blacking out?
Mr. Depp was very open with everyone that he was a heavy user. And he told me about, I know there was one instance where he had this very large house property. So if Sweetser Avenue goes like this, the house that I was staying at, 76, is down here, then there's 78, which is right here, and then up here is 80, and then across the street, I guess, is 82. And 82 is a very large compound. So he and I were staying, I was at 76 or up at 80, and then 82 they lived in for a brief period of time. And he told me about like vanishing into 82, into the like the property, into the like, because it was very lush and a lot of trees, and went up quite far up the hill. And he told me about kind of like blacking out and going in there on one instance. He told me, I know that he told me that in Australia, he had blacked out. But he also told me that he fucked up, so I don't know. In terms of specific blackouts, there were a number. I think he said on the plane, he said that he didn't remember what had happened.
What, if anything, did Mr. Depp say to you about whether he wanted to become sober and clean?
Mr. Depp expressed to me that he wanted to get sober for Amber, that he didn't enjoy being sober, that it wasn't fun, and that it was distressing and exhausting, and very hard to do. He really resented having to be sober. Yeah, he didn't want to be.
And what, if anything, did Mr. Depp say to you about his perception of Amber's role in him becoming sober and clean?
He expressed a number of times that he felt like she was his leash and she was holding him back from doing what he wanted to do in terms of substances and alcohol. I just want to go back to another incident that I remember. He told me he blacked out, was on the island. He went to the Bahamas. There were two different instances. One was, I guess, like they had only recently met, and he told me that he passed out face down in the sand while his kids were there, and that the staff had like whisked his kids away so that they didn't see it.
Mr. Tillet Wright, when you said that Mr. Depp used the term monster, what do you recall him saying about that?
And the language that ended up being kind of settled on was that there was